There's been a group of people in Charlottesville working on this collection and trying to make it happen so that it can be preserved. And that committee is Cindy Brand, Carolyn Burgess, Kate Rosenfield, Margaret Lake, Van Johnson, Mildred Spicer, Lynn Rainville, Nancy O'Brien, and myself. And I want to thank them for what they've done. It's so exciting to be here today to celebrate the work of Frances Brand, a citizen of Charlottesville in many ways, but a very special way, which I think is probably unique to Charlottesville, a way to look back at our history that no one else has. It's a very precious thing that we have in this art collection.
Thank you very much for coming out. I'm on the board of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, and we are delighted to both host and own the paintings before you. They are not stored on site at the Historical Society, but the Historical Society owns the paintings, and thus if you are interested after the wonderful talks today in using some of these portraits in classrooms and exhibits here in Charlottesville, please do let us know. The collection, this is just a very small portion of the collection. It numbers over 150 portraits, similar in size and form to the ones you see here. 35 of them have been restored so far with generous donations from some of our sponsors.
Well, I've lived pretty nearly everywhere, and I chose Charlottesville to be my home because I'd never really had a home, and it was a very good choice. And what I did was I bought a house, and I tried to make it a home for people who needed it. And during the year of the bicentennial celebrations, it suddenly occurred to me that one of the reasons I had come back here was because of the people, the ones who are living here, many of whom came through the university. And they were wonderful people. Why didn't we celebrate them instead of only always celebrating the same ones? Not to take anything away from them, but to prove that this climate, these people, are still achieving. So I decided to call them the first. And I had no idea what I was stepping into. I began with people like the first black president of the Board of Education, and it went on and on and on. And now I have about 140, and I'm working at 4 at a time, and they're just doing things that are so important they just have to come in here before I exit for good.
This was in 1969. 1970, the party came up with the Democratic Party, who finally told me I had to join, so I joined them. They said, we have got to have a breakthrough here in city government, and we need either a black man or a white woman.
As the 70s started, we were looking for diversity instead of having 5 white men on city council.
So I said, no, I can't do it. Well, so they scoured around and looked and found Charles, who was just wonderful. He made a good candidate and was just fine. And that was fine. So 1972 came along, and my friends Jean Harding and Ora Maupin got behind me, and they pushed me. They said, Jill, you have got to go. We need a woman on the council. I wasn't really all that convinced in those days. So yes, I went out and I campaigned, and I was not much of a campaigner, but we have a good Democratic vote here in the city, so I got elected. But in City Hall, there were secretaries, lots of secretaries, but nobody else. They didn't have any other kind of job. So I went around after I was elected, and I talked to Cole Hendricks and talked about hiring women for every position in the city, and talked to Deke Bowen, who was our chief of police, and said, Deke, you got to hire some women, because I'd heard of other communities that had it. He said, Jill, we can't have police women. I said, come on now, let's give it a try. He did, and after several tries, he got police women coming into the police force, and they are in there today now, and they're all integrated. our house was burglarized about 8 years ago, and the detective sent from the city was a woman, and she did a great job, and I thought, that's great, it's come full circle.
I applied for admission to the School of Nursing here, and they refused me because I was black. So I went back to the University of Michigan and took courses in community recreation. And at the end of that semester, I was employed as director of the Negro Program at the Washington Park Recreation Department. And that was a big deal because they had not in that position before.
For coming. Drury Brown was a household name back in the 70s when I was coming up and when I was in school. If you mentioned the name Drury, everybody knew who you were talking about. Drury did so much for the community, black, white, whoever. But the thing that I remember him most for is when all of us was in school and looking forward to summertime coming out to play, a lot of us wanted jobs, and there weren't any jobs. And we could go to Mecca and talk to Drury. You'd hear some of the kids in school say, "Who is Drury? Who is Drury?" You mean you don't know Drury? We'd get together and we'd go down and we'd talk to Drury Brown. And Drury Brown would place kids in jobs throughout the community. For during the summer, you had something to do. You would get paid and would do something to help the businesses and the community.
I want to introduce someone in the audience who is portrayed in one of the portraits, and she's come to the program today. Teresa Price was the first African-American woman to serve as an officer on the Charlottesville Electoral Board, and her portrait is shown on the far right here. Teresa, could you stand? Let's give Teresa a hand. Thank you, Ms. Price.
My whole life has been aimed at doing and showing my gratitude for the good luck I've had. I have about 14 grandchildren, and I've got 9 great-grandsons.
We're especially pleased to have with us today the granddaughter of Francis Brand. Cindy Brand has served as the curator of this collection for many years before it was given to the Historical Society, and so she's going to speak about her grandmother. Thank you.
Hey. All right, can you all hear me? Is this good? All right. Frances Christian Brand was a woman ahead of her time. From generations of military officers, she felt her father was disappointed that she was born a girl. She was the first woman in her family to join the military, and she achieved the rank of major. During her well-traveled life as the daughter of an Army officer and then the wife of an Army officer, she developed a self-awareness as a world citizen.
From Grandma, I learned that art can help bring social change. Grandma tried to depict people that were treated with disrespect by the majority of people. It's hard to remember now, but women and black people were in her time considered inferior people. Grandma chronicled social change by honoring the first black or woman that she knew to occupy jobs traditionally reserved for white men.
Of these portraits, most of them have been identified, and if somehow you've gotten to this talk and you have not yet heard of Frances Brand, the idea behind this project was to document the firsts, people in Charlottesville, Virginia, who were the first to do something. But of these individuals, of these 150 portraits, 20 of them we have not yet identified. And I encourage you, the entire collection is online at the Historical Society website, which is www.albemarlehistory.org. So all one word, Albemarle History. And there you can see the 20 portraits that we have not yet identified. So I encourage those of you who have been around in Charlottesville for a while to see if you can identify any of your friends or former colleagues.
During our bicentennial celebrations, she thought, we are honoring these heroes who built our great country, but they're all dead. There are heroes among us today who should be honored. And so she began painting her series of Charlottesville firsts, people who broke through barriers of race, gender, or creed to achieve the outstanding.
Before we close, I want to mention what has yet to be done in this project. First is to identify the unknowns in the collection. If anyone watching has any ideas, if you've looked at the portraits in the Historical Society website and you think you know some of the people that are marked as unknown, please let us know. We've done interviews with 18 of the people, but we want to continue to do interviews of the people who are living, obviously. We want to continue to do research on these people. We want to locate a permanent place for a rotating exhibit of the paintings. And of course, we want to lend portraits to people who want to exhibit them in their own school or whatever place they have. And finally, of course, we need additional funds to continue the restoration.